This is the OnePlus 10T, and if you're confused by the purpose of this phone, trust me, you're not alone. See, this is not the successor to the OnePlus 10 Pro that I praised earlier this year. Instead, it's meant to be a follow-up to the OnePlus 10 we never really got to see. It's technically better in certain ways than the 10 Pro, as is every T launch in the summer, but in general, the Pro is still the Pro. As such, this is the phone OnePlus makes for its core audience, the flagship killer that's meant to give you more for your money by skimping on a couple of things to keep the price down. In the past, this would be the no-brainer phone to recommend given the amount of value OnePlus would provide, but let's just say that this year, it's not so simple. Not for the amount of money that the company is asking for. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocketnow, and let's dive into our full review. OnePlus became famous for two things. The first was spending its early days defying the establishment. It was hard to resist their virality for pricing phones in ways that completely disrupted the market. We can thank them today for forcing even the most powerful players to have their own flagship killers, but then that is what leads me to the second reason. See, OnePlus is also known for repeatedly admitting it's lost its way, and a lot of it with being the hero that lived long enough to become the villain. It's been complicated to recommend their phones for the last 3 years as prices grew and their implementation did not. It really wasn't until the 10 Pro that I felt there was a light at the end of the tunnel, as that phone was great and very well priced, but then the 10T is not necessarily that. It may share a lot of the design language of the 10 Pro, but looks can be deceiving. This is a plastic frame instead of aluminum, Gorilla Glass 5 instead of anything more modern. You will love the textured finish of this moonstone black though, but I'm not exactly sure going glass unibody, even on the cameras, will age well. In its defense, I do like the feel given its large footprint, but I wouldn't call the experience premium, nor will I celebrate the death of the mute slider. All these sacrifices were made for the sake of giving you better internals, and boy does this phone pack a punch. We have the latest Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 powering the show with up to 16 gigs of RAM and up to 256 gigs of the fastest storage, and then the latest Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all flavors of 5G are in the package. The battery might not be the largest, but its dual design paired with the 150-watt charger that comes in the box will charge this phone from 0 to 100 in just, 20 minutes? And yeah, I know that in the United States it's more like 120 watts given the voltage limitations, but still, these are crazy numbers. Now, if you're already wondering what's the catch, well, wireless charging took a hit, and as usual, the IP rating depends on your carrier, even if and I know that splash resistance is a given. Another thing to like about this phone is not just the screen, but the fact that it's flat. It might not have all the resolution of the 10 Pro, but it's got fantastic color reproduction, the viewing angles are top-notch, and the adaptive 120Hz refresh rate is pretty smooth. If anything, I know some of you will nitpick the speakers not being balanced, but I find content consumption to be pretty great. The company we knew was not entirely lost. Actually, the overall experience using this phone has been pretty awesome. This is Oxygen OS on top of Android 12, and in typical OnePlus fashion, it's pretty fluid and well thought out. It's no longer more stock than what Google provides with the Pixel, and if anything, I feel it's more inclined to ColorOS than before, though with the added value we've known OnePlus for. Lots of speed in every single interaction, lots of flexibility in what every UI element does, and the advantage that you can easily disable whatever you don't like. I know some of you will complain about the shelf, so just switch it off. I actually like having that extra pane of widgets, but again, it's whatever you want this phone to be. The added advantage is that this phone barely sips on power as well. This is seriously a 2-day phone regardless of how much you tax it, and its reliability in remaining connected to data and during phone calls is all seriously flagship territory. Now, you would think that things would drift completely sideways when it comes to the camera because of the OnePlus legacy, privacy, but keep in mind that I did recommend the OnePlus 10 Pro for its photography, and when it comes to this phone, that's not necessarily the case. Yes, the Hasselblad branding is gone along with the color science, and yes, the spec sheet might not be amazing if you were to consider that one of these 3 camera sensors is useless. But to be fair, more expensive iPhones ship with only 2 cameras, and what you really care about are the results. In that regard, photos during the day are actually better than expected. Colors are not overdone, detail is pretty sharp, and as opposed to the previous T OnePlus phones, color is consistent, where before you never knew what you were going to get. Actually, do yourself a favor and don't trust the viewfinder. Clearly, there is a lot of computational photography going on because the end results show far more dynamic range than when you're taking the shot, which could also mean that the screen just doesn't get bright enough in certain scenarios. The ultra-wide is good, the 2x digital crop is fine, but just don't push it too hard. Sadly, at night, you're pretty much left with only one camera. The ultra-wide is completely useless by getting the detail completely wrong and ruining the rest with lens flares, and I think the same can be said about the digital crop in 2x. Here it's seriously the primary or bust, which is not necessarily bad for phones at this price range. The results from this primary, even in tough conditions, are pretty good, but then that's just about it. I do love the portraits from this phone, handling skin tones and dynamic range far better than before, and I feel the same about selfies and the portraits from the front shooter as well. Skin tones are not overdone. What I can't forgive, yet again, is video because this phone is just a mess. For starters, 4K from the primary doesn't support the ultra-wide, and the zoom controls are horribly inconsistent. And then those overdone colors you'll notice are because this camera records in Rec 2020 color space that very few people buying anything in this price range will be willing to appreciate. Flip on over to the selfie camera and notice that the Rec 2020 is gone, so there goes consistency, and make sure you enable stabilization for the camera because that doesn't come by default. And yes, 7 years after OnePlus started doing 1080p selfie video, we still can't get 4K from the front camera, even if the OnePlus Nord 1 did so. To conclude, I think you understand why it's complicated to review this phone. If seen in a vacuum, the OnePlus 10T is a pretty good phone. It packs a lot of power, some interesting innovations, the experience using it is pretty awesome, and even the camera is what I would call decent. It almost reminds me of one of those gaming phones you'll see around the market lately, given how much it prioritizes specs over design, build, or the camera. The problem is that the store shelf is not alone, and especially not in the United States. You can save $50 to get a better build and cameras on the Pixel 6, and save nearly $200 if you sacrifice a bit more for the Pixel 6a. And sure, you can dig in the rabbit hole and find an even less expensive Galaxy S21 FE and others. It would really depend on how much you value the 120Hz, the crazy fast charging that even includes an expensive charger in the box, and if getting better cameras is really not important to you. Heck, with the recent price drop of the OnePlus 10 Pro, I'd even say you should look in that direction as well. Bottom line, I don't think the price tag is bad, but at the same time, when everyone in the younger demographic wants to become a content creator or influencer, this is not even close to the first phone that I would recommend or even buy for any of my teenagers. It's a good phone overall, but not the impulsive buy in today's market like OnePlus phones used to be so many years ago. Let us know if you agree with our assessment in the comments down below, and while you're at it, follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me once again want to love this phone more than I can. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.